Hey humans, Coach Nate here with today's Battle Pan podcast. What is self love? What does it mean? What isn't it? And what are the benefits? We're going to cover that in today's podcast with fellow coach, Coach Maria. Well, we're going to talk candidly and dive in and peel the layers of the onion back to really understand what is self love, its benefits, what happens when you don't, and why that matters. So let's join in on that conversation of a chat with coaches talking about self love. I agree.
Mm,
Did you hear that?
yeah.
All right.
Yes.
I'm just going to hit it. I'm not going to go through this, whatever. Okay. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, you're right. Next time, hi, record, and then we'll figure it out
Uh-huh.
and I can edit
What's
it.
up? Oh my gosh, you have no idea. You
And
have no idea.
it's the challenge I'm finding with social media is I'm sharing things with people
Mm,
that aren't what they want to hear, but are what
mm,
they need to hear.
I love
And
it.
that's not popular. That's
It's
not
not.
trendy, but
Yeah.
it's also not toxic. Um,
Hmm.
just the what do you call it? The indulgence. The um, you just said it. I can't remember the
Oh, the guilty pleasure.
yes, and that's what people are chasing, and then
Yeah.
quickly it runs out. It doesn't satiate for very long.
To this. But yeah, satiation is one of those things that people don't take a moment to consider. And like you said, they're looking for like a hit, they're looking for something that feeds their ego momentarily.
A quick fix,
Mhm.
as opposed to, as you just described, you want to fully immerse and experience,
Yes,
right? To Hershey's, not even Dollar Tree chocolate versus Godiva.
correct.
One
But
can,
because, and you and I see it all the time as coaches, because the Godiva is going to take work.
mhm,
There is a price you pay for everything you want.
absolutely,
you know
absolutely,
you want to have a better body, you got to diet and exercise.
yes,
You want to get a bachelor's, you got to put the time in.
hmm,
You want to get out of debt, well, you got to start budgeting. And all of that stuff comes with restrictive behavior,
mm,
and comes with learning boundaries, and comes with practicing discipline and self mastery. And that's hard. And I think this is like a good segue to kind of, and I'm sorry, I'm going to take, I totally took over. But I think it's a good segue to our topic today for self love.
absolutely, absolutely.
Because what is self love?
And that is a great, and thank you. That is the question, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. That is the question. What is self love? How would you define it?
Woo! Um, I think half of what I said prior to this, I think self love in a nutshell is honoring your true self. And in that process comes embracing wholeheartedly the person you are now to be able to become the person you want to, which entangles with the cute stuff, but also, as we were mentioning, the not so cute stuff, the painful stuff, the hard stuff, the it's going to cost me stuff. The merging of self-compassion with fierce self-compassion, which is grace plus accountability. And bringing that together in your life.
So you just like answered all of the questions about this whole topic in one sentence, which we're going to unpack and,
Yes.
and dive into. Nicely done. If we were to start with, and I like to unpack things. Words matter. Words have value
Words.
and meaning, and they can mean different things to different people. But it's
Mm.
important to understand what what they're intended to fully understand the full context and the meaning of it. So if we were to start with, and you touched on it already, we talk about self love. What is love? And we look at the dictionary definition. It's a deep affection, fondness, a tenderness, a warmth, certainly intimacy, attachment, endearment, devotion, adoration, idol. That's a well, we're not gonna do the idol.
Toxic. I'd say toxic a little, but okay.
But that's from the noun perspective. Some people can look at it as that, and what I don't agree with, even though it's in the dictionary, I would say these are more superficial. Is the love can be a desire, but I don't know about the lust, and that to me should be in the like category. Certainly, yearning, infatuation, adulation, and so love, and you mentioned compassion, is valuing, appreciating. We can love inanimate objects, things, but we're talking about human beings. That deep, profound affection. Is it a feeling? Yes, but what you just described, it's work. It's different than like. I can like you, and that might be fun, but to love requires effort. Like in relationships, those will be another episode, but you can love the person, but that doesn't necessarily mean you like them. And in loving them, you're doing something that you are doing because of that deep affection, because of that affinity, because of the value, because of what they mean to you as a human being. But you're separating the human from the behavior. So, with that, when we talk about self love, it is having that we can have for others for ourselves.
Yes.
So, what's the difference between self love and how a narcissist would feel about themselves?
Oh God, you're gonna touch on this already?
Just to distinguish the two.
Ah, well, to go back to the definition you gave, I think the narcissist perspective has this like tendency towards, the adulation, the idlement, I see it visually like sort of this bowing down, you know? And I mentioned the word toxic because it sort of feels like boundaryless. It's like all encompassing, not truly honoring, but pretending to, versus the real one, which to me speaks of acceptance, where
Mm.
you don't necessarily have to agree with me. You can love me and you can say, dude, you're really off on that topic,
Hmm.
but you love me, you know? So, and I accept you. And it's like, oh, I'm really not on board with this, but I accept you. You don't even have to support me. You don't even have to embrace the concept. You just have to be able to say, I honor this. And as that's the love from one person to another. But
Hmm.
when it's in regard to the self-love, I think a big part of it begins with accepting oneself and noticing those strange, because to me they are genuinely strange judgments
Mm.
we have and we pose about things that are so trivial and non-crucial to like our existence,
Yeah.
that they can take up so much energy from us and diverge or like take us on another path
Hmm.
that is not self-love but more critical and just kind of from a place of not anchored. So I'd say self-love is acceptance again, kind of what I mentioned. But acceptance takes work
Hmm.
because
So,
you have to question yourself.
right. So we're drawing the distinction then is a narcissist will view themselves judgmentally as better than everybody else, judging others, putting them down. I'm the only. I'm the best. Nothing else and no one else matters. And self-absorbed,
Mm.
where what you've just defined in terms of a healthy self-love is accepting yourself as good enough and absorbing yourself versus being self-absorbed. So embracing who you are and valuing who you are,
Mhm,
your assets and your imperfections,
mhm,
and where it really can count more than anything, which is again is the polar opposite of a narcissist, is not judging yourself, showing yourself grace in those areas of imperfection.
mhm,
And again, I'm good enough. I value who I am. I'm embracing those things as part of who I am, even if they're flawed or viewed. Again, that could be a judgment, even if they may be viewed as flaws.
mhm,
I'm okay with who I am. I know my heart, I know my intent, and I'm only comparing myself to myself as opposed to
mhm,
others. So,
mhm.
and the reason I wanted to point that out is this because some people will view self love as well, that's narcissistic behavior. They don't understand what a narcissist is or narcissistic behavior, right?
Ah, yes, I'm glad
It's
you mentioned that because I have a, a bone to pick with that. But yeah, with that whole concept,
right,
yeah.
right. It doesn't mean you're so self absorbed and nobody else matters. It's simply starting with what should matter, you as an individual. And then you're to the point you made, you're not finding yourself being distracted with running off, seeking the approval of others, or getting caught up in um, putting yourself down, beating yourself up, and negatively impacting your self esteem, self concept,
Mhm,
your self confidence by evaluating every little thing. Love covers so much. and it
Yes.
embraces and it envelops and it's warmth. And when we hurt, it hugs, it hurts. When we hurt, hurts less when we get a hug.
Hmm.
So self-love is some respects hugging ourselves. And that helps us to work through things.
Hmm.
Philosophical, but more than that, it's there's truth to that.
Yeah, this brings up something about what you mentioned in terms of, I heard it yesterday, and I want to provide a source. It's a Life is Mental, I think. I don't remember his name, but he talks about how even the word says it, self-love. He's like, it it's called self-love for a reason. It comes from the self. It comes from within. You have to cultivate it inside of you, because if you cultivate this, you not only have more to share and branch out from, but you also don't depend on others to feed on their energy to feel worthy. And so it's not a concept of overindulging in myself.
Hmm.
It's a concept of survival. If I can't hold my own, then I can't hold somebody else's own. It's
Hmm.
kind of one of those things where it's like, if I can't stand on my two legs, I can't help you stand.
So you've just
So
changed. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
Because this, that's the bone I had to pick. It's like, again, as coaches, we have a lot of conversations, and there's a lot going into this idea that anything that you focus on yourself it's so self-involved, or it's so, narcissistic. And I'm like, no, it's not. This is where everything stems from. I want this to be pristine so I can have my energy, you know, clear cut, clean, that I can offer to you in friendships, in relationships,
Hmm.
professionally, in any interactions I have. And so I I'd argue self-love is a matter of survival and a need, a need. We seek acceptance from others.
Hmm.
Why can't we accept ourselves?
And why shouldn't it start there?
Uh-huh.
It's pretty much just answered the next question: is why is it important? If how can we communicate, convey to others how we want to be loved if we aren't capable of, if we don't know how to love ourselves? And the most important relationship is the relationship we have with ourselves, is what I'm hearing you say. And that should be based on a profound love.
Mhm.
And that love is helps us, what I heard you say, remain focused on what matters and less focused on what doesn't. So we don't get distracted. So we are less negatively impacted by what goes on outside of us and more focused on what is occurring inside of us. I think there was a saying that said, the voice you're going to hear the most in your life is when you talk to yourself. So be kind.
Mhm.
And so we why it is important is because it boils down to to our core, the core of who we are, which in turn impacts every relationship we have, starting with ourselves and then with others. What that the health of that relationship, at least 50% of it, our half. The other individual could be perfectly balanced and healthy and bring 50% to the table. But if we're only at 15%, then
Mhm,
we've just now made an unhealthy connection
mhm.
where it's not 50-50 now. Yeah, granted, there's all sorts of arguments. It's not always 50-50. Sometimes it's 80-20, depending on the day. But I'm just talking about,
Yeah, but in general, like
yes,
reciprocity is foundational.
foundation. Thank you. At the foundation. If we're going to build a building, what is one of the most crucial aspects? Yes, you've got the steel beams that hold the upper floors together, but what holds it together? The foundation. So self love, why it's important, is the foundation on
Mhm,
which we build almost everything. Our relationships, our careers, our self concept, our self esteem, um, our outlook on life, our world. Yes, there are external environmental factors that occur that also impact those things
mhm.
and help shape them. But if those are not so good, that self love ability helps us to navigate through those challenges in life that we will experience undoubtedly, inevitably, without escape.
For sure. That is a guarantee. You know, when my clients ask me, what can you guarantee? Oh, I can guarantee stress is coming,
Yes.
situations are going to happen, all of this.
Right.
And this is why we do the work. You mentioned the inner voice. And then at the beginning, you said words are important. Words are magic.
Hmm.
And thoughts are fundamentally what bring you to these states where you can create and manifest and bring about and build. So it's important work to curate that. I mean, I would argue it's the most important work
Mm-hmm.
because, again, from here, and from here stems everything you create in your life. Your interaction with yourself sets the tone for your interaction with others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you tell yourself comes to play in conversations you have. It's the energy you bring out.
Mm-hmm.
So, is cultivating it a priority, an urgent one? The center of your life? Absolutely. It should, anyway. I
Sounds like
don't, you know.
sounds like that inner dialogue eventually becomes the external dialogue. The inner dialogue we're having with ourselves inevitably will find its way in conversations we're having with others. And in doing that, we are then training them how to interact with, view us, treat us. They may have one, in other words, they may have a completely different version of us in their heads, a good, healthy one, until we
Mhm.
correct them with a not so good version based on us not necessarily loving ourselves, which again ties into the What happens when we don't? What happens when we don't love ourselves?
Ooh. That's a deep one. ah, this, this is starting to seem like therapy, Mr. Nate.
It's
No, I'm
therapeutic to
joking.
talk.
I like to talk not from the book perspective,
Mhm.
but from personal experience and kind of what I've learned along the path. Of course, I'm tainted because of everything, I read and consume and whatever. But what happens when you don't love yourself is, in a nutshell, you burn down to ashes. In a nutshell.
Mm.
But the bigger process of that is you feel highly disenfranchised. You seek for validation externally and never get it.
Mm.
You have people pleasing tendencies because you want to be loved. And then you realize nobody that you're trying to please is actually pleased. And it's never enough. It's never enough. You you leave yourself behind. And the worst part of it is you do all this work to try to keep something together, whether it be a facade, a relationship, a lifestyle, a whatever that is that you're trying to hold together on the basis of lack of self-love instead of self-love. And it inevitably falls apart because it has no foundation.
That's
And when all is said and done, the only you realize, because it's a process, you start grieving, and then there comes the blame, and they didn't love me, they didn't give me, they didn't do this. And one day you wake up and you're like, shit. That was me.
mm.
I didn't value myself. I didn't validate myself. I didn't give myself a place. I was the one running around. Like, if there's anyone to forgive in this process, it's myself.
Mhm.
And so it's a very painful process because there's a lot of acceptance to work around. And there's a lot of forgiveness to offer yourself. But most of all is there's a lot of letting go of the things you did for love, for seeking out the love from others that
Right, right.
was all this time within.
So if we don't love ourselves, what I'm hearing you say is we're going to seek it externally
Mm,
and go further than we intend to go in that seeking,
mm.
paying a price more than we had ever thought we would. And
Yeah.
it never, it never being what it is that what we're after. It's not the substance. It's not ever fulfilling. It's just a constant chasing, a lowering of our value of ourselves to gain very little. almost, I'll go so far to say worthless
Nothing.
experiences, and then our reward for all of that effort and energy is regret over time spent and wasted, of how we've diminished ourselves, dimmed our light. And if we're willing to do the work to embrace that those were our choices that we made, can't blame
Uh-huh.
others, that we allowed ourselves to do that. And then in the healing process of all that, to say, yep, that happened. Fortunately, yesterday ended last night. I'm going to not continue to make the same choices, and I'm going to make different ones. And from here forward, they're going to be better for me, and they're going to have the foundation of self love. Everything I do, every conversation, every interaction has got to have that foundation of, is this in line with my authentic self, my true self, me
Mm.
loving myself? Is this good for me, or is this better for them? Is this, does this serve me, or does it diminish me?
Mm-hmm.
And then having our behaviors be in line with that self love foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what you're saying? Or,
The only thing that I would differ with, I mean, not even differ, because you do experience regret at one point.
Mhm,
You know, you experience that kind of moment where you're like, damn, this was really a waste of time.
mhm,
But then along the way, you learn that nothing is a waste of time.
okay, fair.
And regret is not, regret evolves into sort of the biggest treasure you have.
Mm,
It's like, if I wouldn't have done this, actually, I wouldn't have learned this. And I wouldn't be who I am. So it's a process, but it evolves into this thing. I think there's a quote like, somebody gave me once a box of darkness or something like that, right? And it was
mhm,
like the best gift in my life. Like, I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's one of those where it's like, some of those, you get to know yourself better in some of those darkest moments
mhm,
where self-love is not in practice, in full action, in embodiment, that later take you to places in your life where you're like, that is the only thing that gave me the necessary tools
mhm.
to be able to be right here right now. So there's absolutely no regret. There's, at the time, at the full circle of it, it's actually quite a happy moment, and you embrace things fully.
What I'm hearing
That's
you say.
what I would.
Yes. Okay. No, that is a great distinction. Thank you for calling that out, because what, while those actions and behaviors produce regret, what you are doing is taking that byproduct in your healing process and using it as a brick to build upon. And so that lets us know regret should not be a destination, right? It's
Yeah,
a
no,
very
it's
important point. It may
uh-huh.
be a byproduct, but like we have a practice of recycling plastics. They can either
Mm.
sit in a landfill, or we can do something with them. So
Correct.
the key point is, even if bitterness is stale regret, unused, sitting
Mhm.
there, we're stuck there at a destination. But rather than getting stuck there,
Mhm.
saying, in anything that we do, any actions that we take, anything that may not turn out as we hope for, I'm stopping one step short of saying failure, but sometimes we call it that.
Mhm.
If we look for the lesson, look for the learning, there may be a lesson, there may be learning, there may be, look for the value in it, extract
Mhm.
that, discard the rest. And then what I'm hearing you say is you're using that extraction in putting it on the foundation of self-love, and continuing to build the structure up, a solid, sturdy structure that can
Yes.
withstand life's storms.
Yes. And I think it's a mindset.
Mhm.
I think it's a mindset. I think it's important to approach life in general, not only self-love and, you know, ourselves and our relationships. And it's important to approach things from a place where you can see the strengths and you can focus on what you have, not on what you don't. Because
Mm.
that reframe alone does much more for you than dwelling on anything.
Mhm.
Not to say that dwelling doesn't happen
Sure,
and,
sure.
you know, is normal, but, and I think it's part of self-love to have those come to Jesus with yourself and say, dude, get out of this. What are you doing? Like, why are you torturing yourself with
Mm.
these, you know? Like, what good does it do you?
Mhm.
Genuinely.
Mhm.
And I think that's where the fierce self-compassion part comes in. There's a self-compassion part that allows for grace
Mhm.
and space
Mhm.
and kindness and nurturing to our whatever we feel we're lacking.
Mm.
And then there's the fierce self-compassion, which talks to the accountability part, the sitting with yourself part and saying, okay, what part of this am I perpetuating?
Mm.
What, you know, in a thought process
Mhm.
form. I'm not
Mhm.
saying in a relationship, that with yourself
Right.
in the inner battle, which Carl Jung speaks to in one of his essays. This whole battle you think you have with others, and like you go out there to the world and like slay and whatever, that's going on in your head. Sit with yourself and truly consider what's the inner battle and what's going on. And I think that's the accountability part. You know,
Mm.
it's kind of that like, yeah, it's me against me. And how do I shift this?
Right.
And Michael Singer talks to it too and says something around the lines of, you know, when you realize you are not the voice, you are the observer of the voice.
Mm. Mm.
So you can tell the voice to go F itself and I can shift what it says. Damn, you know, you come back to your power. Self-love in this case.
And so if we're not showing ourselves empathy, it's hard to show it for others if we're not grateful, finding something to be grateful for. It's hard to see the good. In other words,
Mm,
what you're saying is it's an inside out job thing,
yeah.
um, that if we lack self compassion, it's hard to have compassion for others.
Mm, yeah.
And if we have lots of inner turmoil going on, we're more than that's what we're going to see in others. There's a you mentioned Carl Jung, and I think what you just hit on was the quote about it. Until you make the unconscious conscious,
Mm.
it'll direct your life, and we'll call it fate.
Ah, I love the concept of fate, but yes.
Well, and then, but you're basically saying self fulfilling. We call it
Yes,
fate, like, well,
correct,
this
correct.
happened because, but it's because of the internal what you see, what you experience. How much of what we experience externally is a
Mm,
direct derivative of the conflict that is occurring internally, and a very simplistic level. If all of a sudden something triggers in my brain and I want chocolate chip cookies, I am probably going to find them somewhere. I'm gonna they gravitate toward. It's what I'm gonna when I go into a store, somewhere that's again very simplistic. But
mhm,
we see what we're looking for. We see what we're feeling. We see experience rather where we're at.
mhm.
Perhaps that's too philosophical, but where the mind is. In other words, you want to see we can look right past incredible sights and be so myopically focused on something that pales in comparison to the
Mm,
scenery around us, because that's what we're focused on.
yes,
So if we have self-love and then we are experiencing that which promotes gratitude and compassion and empathy and and positive feelings, emotions, thoughts, views, we're more likely to see, and then as a result, see that in others, and as a result,
experience.
experience it.
Mhm, mhm,
And then with that, but that, so the first step is not the first step, but one of the steps you just mentioned is having that hard conversation with ourselves. Is this happening out there or is it happening in here?
mhm,
What am I doing to contribute to that I don't want, that I don't desire? And if I am, stop it, do
mhm.
something differently. And if it is going on out there, there's no law or rule that says I have to participate, which from that internal conversation you just had, that's what brings us to self love, will help us maintain boundaries.
Yes, 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 yes. I love boundaries. I love boundaries so much. I can't even tell you.
Let's talk about boundaries.
Oh, let's talk about it. Ah, yes, so much to say about it because precisely self-love allows you to determine, like that inner conversation allows you to cultivate that self-love, to know who you are,
Mhm,
and to say, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what I accept,
mhm,
this is what I don't accept, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. And then in your interactions with yourself first, because that's another layer to it. When you begin practicing these boundaries,
mhm. 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 Mhm.
you need to honor them. because that models for people how you want it. It's
Absolutely.
like you can't expect somebody to meet your to-do list if you don't do your to-do list.
Right.
So we begin there. We begin establishing those things that I accept, those things that I don't accept. And then I start kind of, setting those boundaries for myself, saying, okay, like, I know screen time kills my vibe. So I'm
Mm.
like, dude, I only do an hour.
Hmm.
I know I don't have the bandwidth to go out 3 nights a week. So I don't go out for the simple act of maintaining myself well and practicing self-love. I'm just giving like examples that are
Hmm.
that sound trivial, but they're really not. they're
Right.
at they're at the core of meeting your basic needs.
Right.
Like, for me, it's crucial that I eat 3 times a day and have 2 snacks, and I know that. And if I don't do it, then I'm hangry, and I know myself, and I need my nappy. Yeah, like 2 or 3 a day. My brother says, like, I know nobody that naps so much like you. And I'm like, dude, beauty sleep, like I gotta. Um, but I'm saying, like, that's where it begins.
Hmm.
And then with that, when you have that structure, when you have that kind of like, what works for you, what doesn't,
System.
then you're able to effectively stand for those self-regulating premises.
So we know it works for us, and
Yes,
and and
definitely.
and we're doing it out of self-love, not
Mm-hmm,
punishment.
mm-hmm,
We're doing it for the benefits because we value ourselves. Again, we'll go back because we have to the word love. We have deep affection for ourselves, a fondness, all positive things. If we take the word love, and that then becomes the impetus, the drive, the motivation behind setting boundaries and doing things, the boundary becomes less of a weapon or tool for us to feel guilty, less of a weapon for us to feel guilty about, and more of a resource for us to do the thing that is so positive, to show ourselves kindness and warmth, caring, compassion, and knowing that there are, it should be, indisputable benefits that come from all of those positive things. So I'm doing this for me,
mm-hmm.
not to me,
Correct.
in a
And
proactive, preventive way.
yes, and shifting that idea, because we have a negative idea
Mhm.
of restrictions.
Right.
It's
Denial.
like it's like, if I'm restricted, I'm like, well, no, dude, if you eat the whole bag of chocolates, it's not good for you. So you have to practice healthy restriction.
The
I'm
whole,
talking
the,
about food, for example.
the whole bag.
Speaking of, Mr. Nate, we need a coaching session for practicing healthy restrictions. No,
It,
but
it,
what I'm saying is,
it coats my
like
vocal
you
cords.
said, like you say, restriction can be used as a resource
Yes.
to anchor ourselves. But you gotta hold this in esteem, this concept, and you have to embrace it, and you have to say, I realize that I can have one Hershey Kiss,
Hmm.
or or
Right.
one Buttercup. I don't
Right.
have to have the whole kit.
Right.
I
Right.
can try, I can restrictively enjoy,
Hmm.
and that's okay.
In moderation.
With moderation. And then there are things that there are boundaries that will bring up feelings of non-pleasure
Hmm.
too,
Hmm.
which is okay.
Hmm.
Like, it's that too needs to be practiced. Not everything in this life is going to give me pleasure. Some things are a long-term thing.
Hmm.
I'm doing because, or I'm not doing because of the long run. And
Hmm.
I always find this example, like the no contact rule with your ex, when you just, broke up, and
Hmm.
and you had a very toxic relationship, and like, not to like
Another podcast.
no, yeah,
Another episode.
no pun intended, but no, but that boundary of no contact, where you feel like you're gonna like melt if you don't talk to them in, I don't know, 20 minutes. That is something that on the long run, it's going to detox you from
Hmm.
that whole scene. That needs to be done
Right.
in order to get from one place to another.
Right.
So there will be things that, boundaries that you're gonna hate, but are necessary
Hmm.
and are good for you.
If we broke our leg, we shouldn't walk on it and certainly not run a marathon.
Correct.
If we've eaten something that's causing us to projectile vomit, we probably should refrain from eating until we have healed, is what you're saying. And
Yes.
and in
And it's
terms,
very, go. Sorry.
go ahead.
Um, it's very simple to provide examples for food and for physical things,
Right,
but I
right.
think going to the real bread and butter of it is where people struggle in relationships, for example.
Hmm.
Like, I really don't want to do that, but I feel obligated to attend to this event.
Mm, mm,
Or I really don't like my my in-laws, but like, I have to keep the peace.
right.
Or, there's so many things that we subject to, like, public scrutiny or
Hmm.
whatever the external would evaluate as acceptable and unacceptable, that goes against our makeup.
Hmm.
And so when you know your boundaries, like, this is what you have. This is what you have to play with.
Yeah,
You want to play? You don't want to play? Okay, we don't play.
right.
It's like one of those things.
It is such a profoundly good point because when we don't have self love, if we don't like ourselves, we're going to be far more susceptible to that guilt, to that sense of obligation to do something that we don't actually have to, right? We in we if we're looking down on ourselves, then it would be very easy to, well, you suck because you didn't engage in that conversation.
Mhm.
You didn't fulfill what you felt like externally you were obligated to do, even though you don't want to, you don't need to
Mhm.
in the truest sense to be true to yourself. But if you love yourself enough to have the boundaries to say that is not good for my mental health and my well-being, that is not being mindful, that is toxic, and I love myself too much to subject myself. Very easy not to eat moldy cheese.
Mm.
Much more difficult not to ingest poisons, toxins into our minds because of, as you just said, public opinion or view, or how are they going to see me? When you see yourself, in other words, higher than And when you love yourself enough, that will supersede other people's opinions of you.
Mm.
Opinions, not fact.
Yes.
And help you to understand that they may have those views and those opinions because of what they're warring with on the inside, which has really nothing to do with you, but they need to see you in that light as the villain to make themselves feel less bad about themselves.
Mm.
Set aside self love. This is what I'm doing for. I have such a fondness for who I am as a human being and my mental health and well being, such warmth and such. I would not want to hurt or harm or endanger in any way this being of who I am, whom I'm responsible for.
Correct. Hmm.
And that then becomes the priority. And this action or behavior or doing something or engage or interacting. So you're not doing it against you, you're doing it for you.
You are. And you touch on a really good point because for the people who struggle to cultivate this foundational quality of life,
Mm,
it's very hard to grasp the higher octaves of what self love is. So, my reflection always in those moments I share is if you don't do it for self-indulgence purposes, which is what you think this is right now,
mm, mm, mm,
then do it for survival.
mm.
Because usually, again, in the lack of presence of self-love, you have burnout. You have burnout, like you have no bandwidth, you have no interest, you're carrying a bag of resentment with everyone who pulls you in all directions, and
No energy.
you can't, you're never enough,
Yeah. Mm,
and it's never enough.
mhm.
You're never enough, it's never enough, there's never enough time in the day, there's never enough resources, there's kind of this sense of lack.
Because that's how you view yourself. You view everything else that way.
Yes, so if you're struggling to make this shift, consider that how long do you think this is going you're going to be able to be on this train of like zero energy? So it's kind of, I truly believe us humans are designed to survive at the beginning, and then we dominate that, and then we're like, okay, now I can thrive, but we gotta set that baseline.
Mhm.
And that's kind of one of those thoughts and reminders of, don't do it to thrive or to overindulge on yourself or to be self-involved or to live your best life. No, do it to wake up the next day and feel rested, because you owe yourself a good night's sleep. Do it uh, because you want to be well and alive for your children,
Mhm.
because you want, those things, the those. And
And
then later we can work on the self-actualization. But right now, do it because you have to.
and it's instinctive. I mean, they not going to go too deep into that, but when we talk about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. We are mammals, like in the wild. You've got your lions and your antelope, and the antelope is designed to be aware of its surroundings when it hears a twig snap or something, or a sense of the ground move or a scent. It could be dinner, and it is, we are mammals like they are, wired to the point you just made. Part of that is survival, and
Mhm.
different from being in trauma induced survival mode, another episode, just a basic, I want to, I don't have to think about it. I'm instinctively wired
Mhm.
to do certain things that ensure my survival. For example, if if I simply wanted to discontinue living and I just chose to stop breathing, my body would take over
Uh-huh.
and it would continue to breathe. That I don't have to think about my heart beating. I don't think about my lungs, and so it is natural, is what I'm trying to say. In terms of do it for the survival, it is natural for us to do certain things that ensure our well-being. We understand that on the physical. When we get to understanding that on the mental side,
Mhm.
then we're in a better place. When we don't, bad things happen. We deprive the body of oxygen. If we deprive of nutrients and certain things, we don't function. So if we deprive ourselves of love,
Mhm.
now some will argue, well, that's just not it. Let's not have that conversation. Let's just simply
Ain't
embrace.
nobody got time for
No, thank you.
that.
It,
Ain't
it,
nobody got time for
on somebody
that.
else's show.
Yeah.
Love is such a, if anything we experience in this lifetime, and I feel for those who uh, don't understand it. There are certain personality disorders that no clue what it is. They could read about it,
Mhm.
they could talk about it, but not experience it. That narcissists, sorry, not sorry, is that's the world in which they live,
Mm.
and so there's no reason to ever get even, because they're that's a living hell to go through your entire life and never know what love is, experience it, give it, and receive it, and
Mhm.
to know when that is. So that's a starting point. That's a reason to live. Doesn't cost anything, and we
Mhm.
can experience love, and that can be, earlier we were talking about, that can be so satiating, so fulfilling, so
Mm.
rewarding in just being. But it starts at home. No one's going to love us more than we love ourselves, and we teach others how to love us based on how we love ourselves.
Yes.
We accept less than if we view ourselves as less than. And the bar
Mm.
will just continually go down because people are going to say, well, how little can I get away with?
Mhm.
If you send the message to me that it's okay and acceptable to love you at 59%, I'm going to try 49.
Yeah. It's human nature.
Because it's
It's
work.
$100. I'll give you 80.
Yeah, right. And,
Yeah.
and self-love is, no, there's no negotiation here. It is not eBay. It's not
Mhm.
this this is where it's at. If you, I've invested in me, and if I'm going to, if you're going to be a part of my life, then we have to. That's a boundary. A
Mhm.
boundary is what is the lowest level of what you're willing to accept. But I don't even like wording it that way, because it should not be the lowest
Yeah.
or the minimum.
No,
It
it's
should be,
standards.
thank you, right? That
Mhm.
cars should have brakes.
Mhm. Yeah, like that comes with the package, right?
It's kind of a kind
It's
of an
kind of
important
obvious,
thing.
right?
It's not a
Yeah.
nice to have. It's not a, no, and they should be ideally in the best possible shape, form, and never go below a certain level for a reason. And so
Mm-hmm.
as we're, barreling in life at 80 miles an hour, we're not loving ourselves. And then we find that we're trying to pump the brakes that
Yeah.
don't exist as we run into some toxic behavior or some event or some circumstance that occurs that we have no control over. Crash,
Mm-hmm.
potentially fatal to our mental health and well-being if we don't have the right, in some respects, safety equipment.
Yes.
And so I'm saying all this to hopefully shift the perspective to say boundaries are not fences that we build to keep people out, but they are uh,
Sometimes.
another
I
episode.
mean, we need an
Yes,
electric fence once in a while, but yes,
in
overall.
maybe maybe I should say it this way: boundaries are not fences to keep the people that we care about out.
Not,
Yes, it's to keep the coyotes and the
mhm,
wild from coming into our yard, and if we have livestock or plants, we don't want that to be decimated. Yes, yes,
mhm.
yes. But they're not uh, barriers for those relationships that we want to have.
Correct.
They are ways to help ensure our safety so those relationships stand a chance
Mhm.
of continuing and not harming us or the other person in the process, which could then result in decimating the relationship.
Yes, for
Uh,
me, it's all that, and then it's commitments.
mm, talk about that.
Yes, it's commitments to the rules of the game that we engage in, which are needed for us to healthily, or the most we can,
Mm.
um,
Tell me more about
bring
rules.
about bring about what I hate the word rules, and I'm a rule breaker,
I was going to
actually.
say that's a word that you don't. It's
Yeah,
often
I
not.
don't use it, but I mean, well, maybe going back to standards and saying, it's kind of a set of standards that we establish.
Yeah, baseline minimum
But I think the
requirements.
word commitment right there is important, and reciprocity as well, because after all, everything is an energy exchange.
Okay.
And so, oh, and the word clarity too.
Mm-hmm.
That way we know what we're getting into. We know what we're doing. We know what's accepted and not accepted. And we make a choice to engage or not engage.
So just to be clear, what you're saying is these are the types of behaviors that are acceptable if you choose, if you want to be in a relationship with me. And these are the types of behaviors that I'm not willing to accept. And if that is your choice, that's fine. But in making that choice, you are also choosing to not be in communication, relationship, in my energy space.
Yeah.
You can exist over there, I will exist over here. No harm, no foul. It's we will
You
just
know,
we
no
will
beef.
none.
It's just our energies don't merge.
Right. And that's I don't dislike you. Um you just are.
Yeah.
I'm going to live over here. So that, I think that's what you're saying, that this is
Yes.
beneath my um, I'll say standard of living, if you will, but not in the material sense that that word is always
Yeah,
used.
no. Aha. No, no, you can live your life however you want, and
Right.
I can have my own dynamics, but this is this is what I do, this is how I show up, this is what I want from my interactions. And if we can merge and meet, then
Hmm.
that's cool. If we can't, that's okay too.
Right.
We can both exist at the same time, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, it eliminates pain, it gives clarity, it offers the opportunity of choice, it lets us know where we stand.
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many benefits to it.
Reduces confusion. Yeah.
Yeah, you know where you stand, you
Right.
know where we are, and I know where I am. And,
Mhm.
so it just, I'm a big, as you know, advocate of boundaries. I think they are not only necessary, but fundamental.
Absolutely.
um, and I'm strangely comfortable with establishing them. Apparently, I didn't know it was like an abnormality, but apparently it is.
You didn't.
It's like, yeah, I considered it my gift. I consider it my gift, one of my gifts. But I have heard, like, wow, that was sharp. And I was like, well, if you know me, that's just how shit rolled.
Was
I
it
don't know.
sharp, or was it direct and clear and
And that's
non-confusing?
another podcast, because yes, I think it's that discomfort with that comes with boundaries from other people, and just not knowing them and not knowing how to approach them and manage them and confront them. And when they're met with them, it's like,
So
what?
you think people who say that may not fully understand the concept of boundaries or lack them themselves?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Or they have something to gain from you not having background, the boundaries.
Uh, oh, those people. Yeah.
I mean, either they don't understand them, they don't practice them, or they're like pushing the boundaries because it's like, well, that's not suited for what I need.
How
And it's
dare you
like,
not?
well,
Yeah.
I don't do that. You
How
should
dare you
know
not
that
to
I'm gonna double down. Like, now that you mention, I'm actually going to double down.
when they're trying to convey to you the nerve of you not being there for me to use you.
Yeah. How
Yes.
dare you?
Yeah,
How dare you?
we're going to raise the fence, put the electrify the fence, and
Yeah.
build a moat if necessary.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it, and that's again, that's not being selfish. That's not being self-centered. It is having a focus in self-love, but what's the reason for that? Is so you can be the best person, individual, human that you are, to be there present first for yourself,
Hmm.
to live a fulfilling, mindful life in a very challenging world. And that's simply the way that it is. It's not to uh, put down or to monstersize. It's life. Um,
Hmm.
and secondarily, I believe all of us were given gifts.
Hmm.
We bring a certain light, a benefit to this world. And in order to let that light shine, in order to for others to be recipients, those who we're supposed to share that with, first for ourselves. In order for us to be able to do that, we have to have the energy. We have to have that balance, that mental health and that well-being. Otherwise, we're going to be distracted and absorbed unnecessarily so with
Mhm.
this the ongoings here of behaviors being somewhere we're not supposed to be doing something we're not supposed to be doing, and we're going to miss, if each of us just fulfilled the good that I believe were designed, we'd be living in a very different world. And but maybe perhaps that's too philosophical for some. By and large, it helps us to manage through life more successfully with less stress.
Mhm.
Um, and we know, I think there's a study out there, 83% of illnesses can be tied back to stress, not genetics. We make
Mhm.
ourselves sick. We can give ourselves diseases, cancer even, as a derivative of stress. We were not meant to be, the antelope was not meant to have to run from the lion 24/7.
Yes.
There's some times where we're going to have short-term bouts, and that helps us to navigate, but it's not should not be a steady state. Nor is the lion supposed to sleep all day long.
Correct.
A few naps are okay. But
A lot of nappies, Mr. Nick.
okay. It,
No,
uh,
joke, joke, joke.
it's just
But
which state?
yeah, no, boundaries is they're just such a lengthy topic.
Yeah, yeah.
And to your point about, it's not selfish, I would make another point and say, and what if it is?
Mm, mm,
So what? If it works for me
hmm.
and I'm happy, what do you care what I do with my time and my space and my energy and the boundaries I set? What's so problematic about what I do?
So if what you're doing is not impacting me in any way, what concern is it of
Like,
mine?
why should my screen time affect you?
Mm,
And if it affects you, then you got to analyze yourself and redirect your energy, man, because like there's so many things in this world that you can be worried about. My boundaries are not one of them. So, because there's always like, well, what if it's selfish? What if it's, so what? What if it works for me? Then I am free and sovereign to do with my soul as I may.
right. And it's not entitlement because you're not taking anything from them. They
No,
have
it's
no,
my time, my energy, my
absolutely,
stuff.
right. There's no impact on them whatsoever.
Correct. So, that's another rule of life. Stay in your lane.
Yes, I was just going to say, if we're all on the freeway, 3 lanes, doing the speed limit, I'm in my lane and you're in yours. There's is if I'm not cutting over into yours, if 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 I'm not, there's no there's no need for you to be concerned about what's going on in my life.
Mhm.
If you could focus on yours, I would be appreciative because
It'd be amazing.
the chances of, first of all, I don't need or want you in my lane, and secondly, if you're too focused on mine, there's a chance that you might edge over it, and now I've got a defensive driving, and so it's defensive living.
Mm.
And one of the best driving instructions I've ever received was always drive like anticipate, always being prepared for the next person is going to do something unexpected, and that way you're always ready. It's
Mm.
not necessarily they want to or intending to or any ill will or any nefarious. It just could happen. And so, some people probably would be very opposed to the word defensive living, but the point being is, I'm going to First, we're going to stay in self love, be focused on myself, where I need to be, my mental
Mhm.
health, and my well being, but also simply being aware that at any point in time, something could go awry out here. To avoid the idea of the defensive driving is to avoid a crash. So, to avoid me crashing, I'm going to anticipate that person may try to get in my lane and I will do what I need to do. I'm not going to no, no life rage, road rage, where I'm going to chase them
Mhm.
down and you got in my lane. No, I just understand that happens. But I'm about maintaining self love. I'm about maintaining my mental health and well being. I'm about maintaining mindfulness, my energy, my focus
Mhm.
on a place of peace and positive energy
Mhm.
of just being mindful to
Mhm.
preventively taking proactive measures to prevent a disruption in that mindful place as much as I possibly can, as often as I can, because that reduces the stress level and puts me in a place where I can better manage when,
Respond.
not if, something unexpected, unfortunate, not so good happens. And then I have the energy that I need to react to that and then come back.
Yes. I think it goes back to like our initial, you know, what where we started, which is the guarantee is shit's gonna happen.
Yes.
It's just it is what it is.
Yes.
I mean, if there is any certainty and guarantee that we can make is
Hmm.
that it is gonna go down at one point.
Yep.
So we want to gather these premises and we want to equip ourselves with what we know works for us
Mhm.
to be able to remain anchored,
Mhm.
respond appropriately, and do so in a manner that doesn't take from us in the happy moments.
Mhm.
You know, life is life, but it's not defensive to say things happen. No, they're going to happen. But
Absolutely.
when you cultivate these types of things, then you are more anchored and you say, you even like, you even know, like, oh, it's going to happen. And when it happens, I, I can do this.
Mhm.
I can do that. I can, you are resourceful in yourself and you know you've got your back and you know you can rely on that inner Maria that shows up with
Mhm.
the weirdest solutions in the world. But, you know, like, oh, I know, let's just go to Tulum for 3 weeks and then we can, you know, forget about it. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know,
Right. Right.
you have the resources inside of you. And self love is at the center of it.
Such a profoundly good point because what you're saying is that having the self love is utilizing those internal resources to help you mitigate, manage, and cope when life is lifing.
Uh huh.
In in the absence of self love, it is highly probable that those same resources that we could use to help us, we are using or allowing them to be used to inflict further harm. In the
Mm.
absence of self love, we are helping life slap the snot on us.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think, you know, it doesn't have to be good or bad.
Hmm.
I just think like it's things will happen. All sorts of things,
Sure.
all sorts of weird, strange things will happen.
Understood. Challenges.
Challenges and opportunities
Okay.
and you know, all the
Okay.
good stuff.
Okay.
And so it doesn't have to be a terrible experience.
so we could actually get more out of the good with self-love.
More out of anything.
Yes.
You either you win or you learn. I never lose. I never lose.
That is a perspective, mindset, value that I'm going to say only self love could produce. You think enough of yourself, you value yourself enough to say, regardless of what happens and what occurs, I'm going to find the benefit of whatever this is for me, relish and be grateful for, relish in and be grateful for the good, and leverage what lessons, insights there are to improve things both in the present and going forward. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, yes. I couldn't have said it better. I want that for my like dating app profile or something. No, I'm joking. I
Some
gotta
things.
go watch the rerun and like write it down, you know?
Oh, fortunately, this is recorded, so AI can extract it and add it in there.
Oh yeah.
But some things we exude, and that's what you can't fake self love. It's gonna you're gonna see it in the eyes and the light. It People will know that know what it that know what self love is and value it. That energy,
Mm,
and to the point you just made, that helps from a dating profile standpoint attract into your life
mm,
more of what you want and desire by being the type of person that you desire. If you want somebody to love you, be and love yourself. Be the type of person that they will want to love, and love yourself in the way that you want them to love you. And that energy exchange will help that occur naturally.
it's amazing. Embodiment and integrity, you
Mm,
know? I mean, you were talking and I was thinking of like they sparked up and I was like, yeah, embodiment and integrity in general. I do the dating joke, but genuinely in general with friendships, with professional relationships, with how you show
absolutely.
up at
Absolutely.
work, at with the cashier and the
Absolutely.
in the grocery shop, all of it,
Hmm.
all of it, all of it, all of it. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, it's so important to romanticize life and
Hmm.
those moments and those trivial situations that people they go unnoticed,
Hmm.
and they could be so much
Yes.
if we just pay attention.
Yes.
So again, this is another podcast because like we could talk forever, right?
Relationships.
But
Yes.
yeah, relationships and interactions and finding the
Yes.
magic in those little pockets that life offers us daily, where
Yes.
God speaks to us and we see magic and it's like, what the like I didn't even expect to have this insight today, but I did, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I think that should be our next topic.
I think you're right, and it's probably a good place to wrap up for today. But we talk about relationships because I mean we're talking about a
Mm,
relationship we have with ourselves, and that determines the quality of every other relationship we have. And relationship is just as you touched on. And here's the teaser for the next podcast. Relationships are not clearly confined to a committed person to person over a long period of time. And some people they just put that on there. To the
mm,
point you just made, the interaction that you have with the cashier, and I have had those moments, and they have
Yeah.
made my day.
I've had conversation like, wow, with the boy who bagged my rice, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, dude, you're awesome. Thank you. You know?
And then if that in some respects may fall under the definition of relationship.
Mhm.
Some of the longest lasting relationships where people are partnered are when they're friends first,
Mm.
or that's the glue. And that friend is, even an exchange of positive energy and all that other crap. Okay, yeah, we're not going to get to that podcast now, but could
Yeah,
you
we gotta
imagine though?
we're gonna do that.
Stay tuned.
Because there's so much to like
There really is.
to
But
unravel there.
the point you were making is just imagine a life where you have so much self love,
Mm.
where it permeates in almost every interaction that you have with any other human being to the good, where those all those positive, you called it magic,
Mm.
um, the energy, the positive, the good, that wholesome, the warmth
Mm.
that occurs, and how valuable, priceless that is in navigating through life, and how that will help shift our perspectives during challenging times, enhance, magnify, and even increase the beauty in the good.
Mhm.
And so, how much are we leaving on the table? How much are we missing out on, um, by not loving ourselves and allowing that love to permeate, to exude, to illuminate our lives?
Mm.
Any parting words about self love?
Oh, I think we touched on everything and more. As always, I think we did. I'd continue to make the argument, this will be the hill I die in.
Mm,
This will be the hill I die in. It's as important as breathing. And the
mhm,
good news is that when you cultivate it and when you nurture it and when you do it and practice it and make it a cornerstone for your life, it becomes the standard.
mm,
It's like that nature, like you were talking about the antelope, where they're
mhm,
like, it's just their natural, it's just your natural. It
mhm.
just like that's just that's how I live. I know I have no intention of doing it any other way.
Right.
And it works, so I think that's the good news. No,
Yes.
even
Well, this has been a really, fascinating conversation, and I don't know about you, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I really appreciate you taking the time to, have a fireside chat with me about this very important topic, and, of self love, and how much it means, and gracing us with your presence, your wisdom, your knowledge, and the essence of you. It's not just a subject I feel that you have expertise on, but it is a way of life, and that comes through very, very loud and clear. So it's been nothing short of an honor to, do this, and I'm looking forward to our, next episodes. That, y'all stay tuned, and, be on the lookout, because there's plenty more good stuff to come. So thank you, Maria. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nate. It was an honor. It is always an honor to sit down with you. Oh, we could talk forever about everything and anything. Um, I look forward to, all the other topics that we touch on and fail to and then do again and, everything. Thank you very much. You are doing great work. I admire you. I truly, truly feel grateful for having crossed paths. Um, you've taught me a lot. And so I think, this is only natural
Hmm.
that we can talk and unravel all this good stuff. Thank
Very
you.
well said. Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. And the feeling's mutual. If, as always, we're just sharing some insights, feel free to try them or toss them. Both of those can be correct answers. Only you can determine which of those for yourself. If you like this content, feel free to give a like and a subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you know when additional content like this is posted and the upcoming episodes that we'll be having. And as always, remember to let go, live now, and win.